Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to the American Superbike Show. I think I'm almost getting to the point where I can stop calling myself the worst podcast on the internet. But I should probably get this microphone I bought working first so I can stop sounding like I'm trying to talk to a speaking spell. You know, when I said in my relaunch episode that I count the Shutdown Fullcast as inspiration, we all should have just known that what I really meant is that this show is going to have poor audio quality. You know, it's baby steps. Hey, if you'd like to sponsor me to help me upgrade my equipment, you can reach out to me on Blue Sky at Stitch-Turner. And I have now added an Instagram page as well to my social media, whatever, footprint, repertoire, whatever you want to call it. And that is at American_Superbike_show. I don't love Instagram, and that's mainly because I don't really know how to use it. But I do recognize it seems to be far and away the most used platform as far as like a social media app by not only the people that make up the Moto America series itself, but, you know, more importantly, the fans. You know, at some point, I would love to be able to add something like a mailbag episode on a semi-regular basis, but that's definitely not going to happen if I don't actually make myself available to interact with other people. So, you can also email me if you wish. AmericanSuperbikeShow@gmail.com if you'd rather go that route. So in this episode, I'm going to review the season that was in Super Hooligans for 2025. There were positives, and in my opinion, there are also some negatives. And I'm still kind of unsure in my mind how the two balance out against each other. So I love the bikes. I think flat track machines are possibly the most beautiful form of motorcycles out there right now. And that's where the whole naked/hooligan bike, you know, gets its genesis from. And it shows, because the bikes are just beautiful. Supposedly, the bikes are also on the cheaper side of a full-blown race machine. And this is supposed to make the class, you know, more accessible for just the average guy. Now, you may say, this is Moto America. This is supposed to be the top level of motorcycle road racing in the United States. It's not supposed to be accessible to everyone. And I can't disagree with that shit more, you know? There's one thing, and only one thing, that continues to make the entire racing world go round, and it affects every single decision that's made on and off the track, and that is the almighty dollar. At some point, and it doesn't matter what level of racing you're talking about, it could be supercross, it could be super bikes, sports cars, hell, even F1 or IndyCar, you're going to have people on the grid that just flat bring more money than talent. It's just the way it is. It's never going to change. It's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way. So it's best to just go ahead and try and accept it and make it work for you. These riders that are coming in and participating and paying their entry fees for these weekends, they're a big part of what helps Moto America put these events on at a first-class level. Now, especially with the end of Stock 1000 as a standalone class, you're going to need somewhere for that gentleman rider to be able to come in and bring his money to the paddock. On top of that, when even the best riders sometimes struggle to put together a budget for a full season of Super Sport or Superbike or Superbike Cup, having a slightly cheaper alternative in Super Hooligans allows these pros to get out there and stay on the grid in front of everybody, showing what they got, and do so on a bike that has enough of a performance potential to kind of keep their skills sharp while continuing to try and get that sponsorship and move up. So what's the downside? Well, there is a little bit of a problem. It does seem to consistently have the title sponsor also be the bike that is easily the class of the field. Especially for a class where the rules are supposed to be written in a way to try and, you know, make a wide variety of machines eligible while keeping the class balanced, kind of like IMSA uses with their quote-unquote balance of performance. So, with all that in place, to me, it's really a bad optic to have the one manufacturer that wrote a check is also the bike that is clearly dominant and sweeps damn near every podium position on the season. I mean, let's see. Excuse me. There were 10 races last year over 5 weekends. So 10 times 3, that's 30 podium spots. And I'm looking down here, and Harley's claimed 27 of the 30 available podium spots. Andy DeBrino went out there and got a third place finish on a Triumph in race 1 at his home track at the Ridge in June. And then Dominic Doyle went out there and he got 2 third-place finishes in the final weekend of the season at Mid-Ohio on a Yamaha MT-09. So before the Harley took over, it was the Indian that was the dominant bike in the class. And I'm not sure exactly what happened with all, because I'll admit I don't follow the motorcycle industry enough to know the ins and outs of everything. But I think what happened was the FTR was Indian stopped producing the FTR, and for whatever reason, the long and the short of it is, it was no longer going to be eligible in either Super Hooligans class or American Flat Track this season. So when Indian ended their, Indian was forced to end their participation in these classes, they also stopped their sponsorship. So it's a good thing that Harley was there to step up and fill the void. But now in flat track, Harley is still running the XG 750R. But here in Hooligans, Harley Davidson has been allowed to run the Pan American out there after it's been stripped down and heavily modified. And that's another big problem for me. Like this class is supposed to be for hooligan/flat track style bikes that are widely accessible. Adventure tours are fun, but they're also damn expensive. This Harley Davidson Pan America costs like $20,000 brand new, and that's before you even spend a dime to do all the modifications that it takes to make it be something completely different than its original intended purpose. I should probably just go ahead and admit that part of this is honestly that I'm pissed at Harley Davidson for not just pulling the trigger and selling the damn Bronx. I mean, instead, we're in a situation where you get the privilege to pay more for a motorcycle that you'll have to spend almost as much on it again to modify to be just like the one that they were originally just going to sell you anyways. But, I digress because that's just my personal biases, and I'm not here to bitch about that, because the real problem is that you just can't take a 1,250cc V-twin machine and expect to be able to balance it with other bikes that are supposed to be originating from a form of racing where nothing else was above 800 cc's. It was a step in the right direction to allow the 3-cylinder bikes from Triumph and Yamaha, but even with the extra cylinder, those machines are still just operating at such a displacement and power disadvantage that they legitimately do not belong in the same class as the Harley. So now I am put in this unenviable position of having to take the position that would probably be considered anti-Harley, and this is all while the bike that I have sitting out there in my driveway is a Harley Davidson. It's the third Harley I bought in a row, as a matter of fact, and that streak has only been broken by the electric dirt bike that I bought to fart around my neighborhood, which is probably just a really Florida thing to say. This topic doesn't really get any easier, though, when it comes to figuring out what the solution is. And I don't even really want to call this a problem, because this is like real first world problem type stuff for a racing series to deal with. But I do believe it's a problem. You can't just ban the Harley. The good folks up in Milwaukee are probably paying a hefty sum to have their name attached to this class. And that money is invaluable. It helps produce this championship at a level befitting a national class. And I should probably be clear, I don't think any of this is being done with any sort of malicious intent to try and favor the sponsored brand. Harley shouldn't be expected in any way to just hand over this kind of capital on the basis of charity. But Harley, they want to go out there and just be able to promote their wins on the weekend and sell more bikes during the week. The whole win on Sunday, sell on Monday thing. It's literally what every manufacturer, it's literally why every manufacturer, they take the grid. And it would be asinine to think that Harley should have any sort of thoughts of forking over that kind of money without even having the opportunity to participate in the race themselves. So they need a machine capable of entry. But when we step back and look at the class in the whole, you have to ask the question, what are we doing here? My wish as a fan of what I would probably want to see is just copy and paste the rules to American Flat Track Super Twins class almost as much as possible. Let's just get back to being a true class of flat track motorcycles, putting on a show on a road racing circuit. Harley even has a motorcycle that they already run there, and it wins races too. But that's not really a good fix either, because Moto America has the Twins Cup, and that's made up of awfully similar machines that just have the addition of bodywork. So maybe the Super Hooligans class can evolve into something more of a Super Sport Light if they can find a way to improve the balanced performance of it all. I don't know. It's a tricky situation, and I don't really have a good answer to it. And I especially hate being that person that just sits here and points out the problems without a solution. But, Unfortunately, I think that's exactly where we're at right now, the Super Hooligans class and what it's evolved to be. I don't like that. So let's let all that go, because it is what it is. And I'm sure the series is going to continue to try and take effort to make steps to balance things further in the future. But we're just going to have to see for 2026 what happens. Let's go ahead and take a look back at what happened in 2025. Well, as you can imagine from everything I've already said up to this point, Harley's happened. I previously mentioned the stat of how the Bar and Shield was able to claim every podium on the season except for 3. In my previous season review episodes I've been doing so far, I've been trying to stick to around the top 5 competitors. If I do that with this class, you guessed it, I would just be talking about Harleys. With all that being said, the class wasn't all boring, though. There's one especially interesting aspect, at least to me, with the Super Hooligans, is that you can take seemingly the 2025 season. It was 5 weekends, 10 races total, and you could just split that right in half down the middle. You got the middle point would be between races 1 and 2 at the Ridge Motorsports Park in June. So before that point, beginning of the season, James Rispoli, he started off the season with a podium in race 1 at Daytona, but by the time they got to that midpoint, he'd only scored 27 points in the season as a whole. That was, a number that was definitely, part of that was 2 goose eggs that he put up at Road Atlanta in May. So, with all that being said, therefore, it makes total sense that he went on to win the championship this season. One of the reasons that happened was it was because once we hit that midpoint that we're talking about between race 1 and race 2 at the Ridge, Rispoli didn't finish any lower than second place for the rest of the season from that point on. It includes a 4-race winning streak to finish off that whole miraculous second half of the year that he had. It was the first Super Hooligans title for James, and it was also the first for Kyle Wyman Racing, and the first for Harley Davidson, I believe, as a manufacturer. Jake Lewis, unfortunately, had the opposite kind of year for the Saddlemen team. Although, congratulations to him on his recent marriage, by the way. Jake had a ho-hum finish for race 1 back at Daytona, but then the very next day, he came out and had probably one of the best race finishes in all of the Moto America history. Not just Super Hooligans, all of Moto America history, when he beat everyone to the stripe at Daytona after exiting the bus stop chicane in 6th place. 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 5 riders in front of him coming out of the last turn, and he still won the race somehow. That kicked off an early run for Lewis, who also went on his own little 4-race win streak. But that ended at the same midpoint of the season, with the fourth. The fourth one of those victories was in race 1, coming at the Ridge. Race 2 had Jake Lewis did finish 3rd. But then Laguna Seca happened, and I hated that so much, man. I remember that day vividly. I was so excited that day to watch Laguna Seca weekend. And I'm sitting here at my desk. I work from home, so I'm sitting here at my desk, and I got a TV above my desk, and I remember firing up the Super Hooligans qualifying 1. It was going to be the first broadcasted action of bikes on track that day. I usually don't watch the preview show live. I wait until my wife gets home from work so that we can watch it together. So that's the first point of the day on a Friday where I usually turn on the TV. And literally I turn on the TV and the first thing I see is Jake crash and have just that, nasty crash that gave him a concussion. That sidelined Jake for the rest of the weekend. It removed his ability to score any more points until the final weekend of the championship at Mid-Ohio. That was just too big of a hole for Jake to overcome. Especially at that last weekend at Mid-Ohio, where he finished second in both races, but he finished second place to the man who ended up wrapping up the championship. It's just gut-wrenching, but Jake's a tough SOB, and I bet you he'll be back next year battling tooth and nail for that number 1 plate. 3rd place was occupied by another Saddlemen rider, and on his Harley Davidson Pan America, it was ridden by Corey West. Wes came into 2025 wearing that number 1 plate for Harley Davidson. Oh yeah, so I guess Kyle, or guess I can't say that James Rispoli won the first for Harley, did he? Because Corey West won the title last year. I am a dumbass. Let's see here. He put in a worthy defense of his crown this season. I mean, he finished on the podium in 6 of the 10 races, while being the only other rider in the class to win a race outside of Lewis and Rispoli. Interestingly enough, keeping with the theme of the season of 2 halves, the 2 races Corey won were the first race of each half of the season. It was, race 1 at Daytona, and his second victory came in race 2 at the Ridge. Let's see here. Harley's also occupied the next 2 places in the championship, with the brothers Travis Wyman in 4th and Cody Wyman in 5th. Both of them were riding for the oldest Wyman at KWR. They both had a very similar season, with the 2 occupying 3rd or 4th place at seemingly every single race in the first half of the season. And then, conversely, there was only 1 podium to be had between the 2 through the rest of the year, when Cody finished 3rd at Laguna Seca in race 1. I mean, not bad finishes, but not great either. I mean, these 2 are where I start to ask the question of how much of that was because of their riding ability and how much of that was just simply because they had a better machine than everyone else. There was just such a statistical dominance this year from the Harley Davidson, and that's a valid question. So let's get a little deeper into the standings. As I stated previously, there were only 2 riders who step up onto the podium this season and that were not riding Harley Davidson. So one of those was the young rider from South Africa, Dominic Doyle. He did that riding the Yamaha MT-09 for Jack Moto Racing. He started the year on the back foot with, if I remember correctly, a mechanical DNF in race 1 at Daytona. But Dominic was able to, be one of the best non-Harleys on most occasions, coming home between, 4th and 6th place for the first half of the year. In the second half, both Doyle and the whole Jack Moto team missed the next round at Laguna Seca. The next round of the second half of the season at Laguna Seca. Sorry, I'm trying to do too much at once and kind of mix my words up in my brain there. But, and they didn't just miss it in Hooligans either, but they also missed the Twins Cup races that weekend that were also run. And I know the reasoning that was given on Live Plus during the weekend was something having to do with electrical issues and whatnot, but I mean, that doesn't really make sense to apply that across multiple different classes to the point where the bikes didn't even make it to the racetrack. I mean, I'm not an expert here, but I've been around the block a few times, and that sounded more like funding issues to me. And if that's the case, I hope those funding issues go away and never return. I like Dominic. I like Chuck G, and their merry little team of hooligans. And this class is better off when they're competing in it. Doyle and the Jack Moto team did return for the last round at Mid-Ohio, and they put it on the box in 3rd place in both races. I think there's promise there that can turn into race victories next year, as long as they aren't being hampered too much by their, balance of performance. In 9th place, 9th place, and I'm going deep into this class, and I'm still might not even hit 20 minutes. But 9th place was Corey Alexander, what was mainly a development season for the radical bespoke entry entered by Arch Motorcycles. For everything that I complained about at the start of this episode with the purpose of Hooligans class and whether Harley belongs, you can apply that all same stuff to this motorcycle because it's not really based on any sort of production-based machine. And yet, I couldn't feel any more of the opposite feelings, in having this bike being a part of the field. And it's an example of how, the same things that allowed the Harley to dominate this class is also what allows this custom-built motorcycle to participate at all. And that's, I guess the difference is just status. Harley-Davidson is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar organization that has multiple different offerings that are produced on the old-fashioned way on the production line. The Arch, on the other hand, it's a custom, bespoke engineering experiment from a relatively small business. I mean, it's a bold statement of racing without a radiator. In the past, I know that other companies like KTM, they've also been given the opportunity to put a development motorcycle on the track in this class. And in both those cases with the Arch and KTM, they did that with a motorcycle that they were actually intending to sell to the public. And I guess that's just another reason why I just get put off by the Pan America. Maybe if Harley actually went through with the bronze model that was assured to be heading to production at one point, I probably feel different about that effort as well. But I'm just not gonna lie. I'm just still pissed that they canceled that bike. I wanted one of those things so bad. Hell, I still want one of those things really bad. Anyways, now I'm just stuck in this situation where I just keep going back on how much the Pan American bothers me. Oh well. I don't really know much about what's in store for the class for 2026. I should also point out and give credit to Moto America that, they know that there is an issue. They were proactive. They didn't just, let the season play out last year when, there was obvious that the Harley was way out in front. They took steps in the middle of the season and made significant adjustments to the minimum weight of the Harley. So what, if any, further changes will be made to try and bring the Pan America back to the pack remains to be seen. I do know of a couple of rides that are already confirmed for next year. Corey Alexander will be back, and he'll be solely focusing on the Hooligans class for the Arch team. And, that might be a kind of team that could knock the Harley off the top spot. Another confirmed ride for 2026 will be the addition of CF Moto to the Super Hooligans paddock. The class champion from 2017 and 18, Andy DeBrito, he's going to be on one of those bikes. He's going to pilot an 800 NK in its debut season. I'd probably be willing to bet that I think KWR will probably return with an unchanged lineup, and probably same for Saddlemen. There'll probably be another effort from Strack Racing, I would hope. I wonder if they'll maybe be considering giving a teammate to run alongside Hawk Mazada. I don't have any idea if Dominic Doyle or Jock Moto will return, either together or separately, and we'll just have to wait and see there. Things in this class do tend to kind of come together at the last minute for a lot of riders and teams. And so that's the Super Hooligans class. I think the next review I'm going to do is going to be on the wonderful program that is put together by Royal Enfield, the Build Train Race program. BTR has recently been confirmed to return for a sixth season in 2026, and I'm not going to lie, I want to get out on track on one of those bikes. They look so fun and so approachable, and it's like they could probably withstand whatever damage I inevitably cause, because I have very little talent. Plus, literally half the world is made up of women. I want to do whatever it takes to grow Moto America, and this is the kind of rising tide that can lift all boats. The more women we have in the stands and in the paddock, the better Moto America will be. All of a sudden, we have come to the end of our show, and now this is, show is available on most major podcast platforms. I need to remember to do a better job of asking you guys to smash that like button or subscribe or whatever the fuck you're supposed to do. And leave a 5-star review, etc., etc. And I should probably start doing this more, at the beginning of the show, but oh well, next time. Baby steps. See y'all later.